Hey everyone, thank you so much for listening to Local Report. This is a podcast about the locals of Calhoun County, Texas, and the people in and around our community. And before beginning, I just want to share with you a couple of important updates. The first one being is if you were to listen to this episode at localrapport.org, you will notice that each episode from this point onward will be fitted with timestamps. And what timestamps are, they're basically almost like a table of contents or chapter markers, if you will, that let you know what's being discussed and when you can find it in our episodes. And I really hope that this can be a useful tool for you. Unfortunately, if you're listening on Spotify, Apple, or on Google, this is a feature that's not yet utilized yet. I hope it can be in the future, but if this is something that you believe you will find helpful, you can find that at localrapport.org. In addition to this update, I'll now be including videos for our podcast episodes with guests who are comfortable with having their episodes recorded in video. And you can find those videos at YouTube at our channel Local Report. And as soon as I can, this episode itself will be uploaded to our channel. I'm excited to be able to find a way to engage you with our guests by putting a face to the people you're listening to. And again, I just want to say thank you for being connected and being a part of this growing experience for myself, and I would hope for our community as we get to connect through this means of getting to hear the stories of the locals in our town. And speaking of locals in our community, I want to introduce our next guest, Frankie Yarborough. She is currently a stay-at-home mother with previous work experience in our town of many years and has been a member of our town for many more years. She has made Port Lavaca her home in spite of a mixed upbringing, and it's her hopes to spread positivity of her newfound outlook of Port Lavaca with her kids and other members in our town. Enjoy. Hey, Frankie. So I'm glad you're here. Thanks for making time from your schedule to make this podcast and spend a minute sharing about yourself and what you do. From the get-go, where are you from and how'd you get here, Frankie?
I was born in Louisiana.
Okay.
And then we moved to Colorado. And then we moved to Port Lavaca. The oil field brought my dad here.
Yeah.
And that all happened within a year of my life. So that's crazy. I've been here since I was a year old in Port Lavaca. I did move away for a period and then move back home. So
right. Yeah. So I mean, Ball means you're definitely a resident native Calhoun. Yes. I would say, even though you weren't, and of course the melting pot that is known as Calhoun.
Right. I claim to be a transplanted Texan.
All right. Yeah. From Louisiana this time. We had Midwest and other places. Now we got Louisiana. Probably the first from Louisiana on here. Glad you made it in. I mean, as of right now, I mean, what do you find yourself doing? And I mean, what was, just some of your work experience before you got to do what you do now?
Let's see. I've been a secretary. I've worked for, I started off in Victoria. So I worked with the Texas Unemployment Agency for a little while.
Okay.
It was just temporary jobs. And then I worked at Equalizer in Victoria, which we had one here.
Okay. I didn't know that.
And let's see. I worked for the Salvation Army in Victoria for a little bit, for about 6 months. That was fun.
Yeah. So for 6 months, what were you doing there at the Salvation Army?
Well, I started off as a secretary, but the Christmas season came along.
Right.
And they needed a coordinator for the bell ringers, the people that stand out
all over the county?
Yeah. Well, not just the county, because we covered Port Lavaca as well.
Oh, okay.
And so, I would have to schedule people. Some people I'd have to pick up and drop off. And then every day I'd have to go swap the kettles out and then take them back all to Victoria and count them all and then deposit them every night. And so, my nights were crazy long.
Yeah. Well, because I guess I totally take for granted that someone has to organize all these people in stores.
I would have to drive to Port Lavaca to pick up their kettles and drive it back to Victoria along with all the Victoria kettles. And so we'd have a group of people that would count it, and we would have to double check everybody. And I'm talking all this change you put in the little kettles.
Yeah, it's heavy.
Yeah, that's a lot of change to count late at night, every night. It was crazy.
So maybe you have some insider knowledge on this, because that's a huge kettle. So how much would an average kettle net from a day's of bell ringing?
I mean, honestly, $200-$300 easy.
Wow.
Because people put a lot of cash in there too.
Okay.
They'll put like some dollar bills, or I mean, if we're lucky, a 20.
Sure.
We had one lady that would sing. She would sing carols all day long, and people loved it so much. She would bring in $200-$300 just off her kettle alone.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So she would ring the bell too. Like, was that
She
like
would
in the
ring the
contract?
bell,
Like you have to
yes.
ring the bell, but
Yeah.
sure, if you want to sing in between rings.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
It was fun. And like we would have people that we would like pay sort of, and then we would have like some people that stayed at the Salvation Army, their shelter.
Right.
Some of those people would come and work for a little, hour or two, something like that. And then we had like different groups, like churches and things that would volunteer their time to go. And they usually about an hour a piece, something like that. And so it was like a constant thing where, people were coming and going. And of course me, like I was always worried about them because it was really cold that year. And so I'd make hot cocoa and drive hot cocoa out to all the different kettles. And so it was a lot of fun.
And that's like one of your traits for sure. Like you definitely have that caring, nurturing, empathy. Like you're thinking, okay, these people are out. It's cold.
Yeah.
Hey, they need some hot cocoa, right? So
yeah, and I'd say that's kind of where it started developing too, is kind of getting to know about the shelter situation and seeing some of the people that would come in the situations they were all facing, and watching how the program worked, how, you could come in off the street and they would clothe you and they would feed you and they'd shelter you, know, and that kind of thing. And just being a part of that was like very satisfying, I guess, and fulfilling.
for sure.
And so that kind of started me on this path of wanting to help,
Yeah.
But of course I had to make money. So
Right.
when I was fresh out of high school, I started working at Formosa for a contractor. And I worked there for a long time. And then it just didn't work out. I left.
And what was this contractor, and like what did you do with them?
It was DDI, Dynametric
Okay.
Design Incorporated. It was a piping company. And as a matter of fact, them and, it used to be Telps and it's Tepsco now. They're the longest lasting contractors out at Formosa Plastics.
Yeah, they're still out there. I mean, they were out there not that long ago.
So fun fact, when I was pregnant with Sarah, right?
Mm-hmm.
How old is she now? 14. So 14 years ago, I was pregnant with Sarah, and I had just come back from a sonogram in Victoria. And so when I pulled in, like I drove my car into the contractors, to where our office was,
right,
which was actually like a block away from the second flare stack. Like all that was empty because none of that was built there yet. Okay.
Right.
That's how old I am. Don't tell anybody. Anyway, so I was pregnant and I was coming in and I'm all excited because I had my first sonogram pictures of Sarah.
Right.
And my father-in-law was the manager there for the maintenance side, which is where I worked at DDI. And he was out in the field. I had managed to tell him that I was there and I had started working, and this big loud bang went off and the whole trailer shook. And I thought, what idiot ran into the trailer. Yes. Yes. And thank goodness, like my best friend worked there and she happened to see me drive in, and she come running in there about 5 minutes later, screaming and hollering, telling me, get up, let's go. And I'm like, what are you talking about? She goes, Frankie, the plant is on fire. And I'm like, no, it's not.
My goodness.
And so she dragged me to the window because right outside the window is the flare.
Right.
And the whole tip of the flare had exploded. And so right about then, another explosion went off and everything shook again. And I could feel the heat coming through the window.
Oh, my gosh.
And I was like, okay, I think it's time to leave.
Let's jet.
Yeah, that was a crazy day.
I can't imagine. And so can you maybe reshare? Maybe I missed it, but okay, what year was this?
Okay, so Sarah was born in 2001.
Oh, you said 14 years ago. Okay, so this wasn't. So for those listening, you may look back
06.
and
Sorry,
06.
She was born in 06, so that was.
I'm with you. I kind of like to think that 14 years ago was.
Yeah, that would be great.
Not as recent as it actually is. So for those listening, if you recall a 2001 explosion.
It wasn't 2001.
I'm sorry, 2005
or 2006. Because I was just pregnant with her, so
Man, that's
born
intense.
in June. I don't remember what month it was or even if it was cold or not. I don't even remember that. I don't think it was that cold.
Right. But you do remember there was an explosion.
Yes.
And you thankfully made it out well, and it looks like Sarah has
a story
been
in
doing
itself. That's a crazy story. Do you want me to finish the story?
Sure. Yeah, not to cut you off. Yeah.
Okay. So I get in my car, right? And you're not supposed to drive. Okay, so y'all don't tell me.
It's a little late.
Yeah. You're not supposed to drive during these things, but like if you have a car, you're not going to want to sit around and walk to the nearest. I mean, that's a ways. I've done that before. I've had to walk, but pregnant, come on. Yeah. So we got in my car and we started heading to gate 5, and I realized I left all the checks. It was payday. It was Thursday. Okay, I'm the secretary. Yeah. I had all the checks. And so I was like, maybe it's a good idea to go get the checks. So I turned back around, and we had one of our welders in the car with us. And I asked him to go get our checks for me. I told him where it was, and he was like, sure. He's walking nonchalantly, just starts walking into the trailer, right? And again, the flare is like right above the trailer. You know, like
you guys
can
are
see it
underneath.
And another explosion went off, and we're like honking the horn and screaming at him, hurry up, you know, and he's like taking his time. It was crazy. So we actually get in the car, we go through gate 5, and there's like a line of people everywhere. Everybody's parked everywhere. Like none of us know what we're doing.
No, and that's the thing, because I understand there's procedures, and here's what you do when A happens, and here's how you properly respond.
They tell you to get out. Well, what do you do when you get out? Now what? Yes.
Exactly. And so that's normally that a good chunk of all that goes out the window whenever it really happens. And I think it's one of those, like, I would imagine it's understandable among workers there, you know, because it's like you reflect about that later. You're just happy to be safe and well. And then you're like, oh, well, we did our best.
So I radioed my father-in-law, and I'm like, hey, we're at gate 5. I have these people with me, because that's one of the protocols. You need to report, you know, who you have with you, who you visually saw was okay. Right. And so I did that, you know, just tried to take inventory of those that worked for us, and who, you know, where they were and what was going on. And he said, where are you? And I said, we're at gate 5. And he said, you're not far enough. And I'm like, okay. He said, get in your car and drive. Just go. Yeah. Get out of here. And I'm like, okay, you know, have you seen your son? And he's like, no. And of course he's not answering his phone. Okay.
Oh, man.
So come to find out, my father-in-law was actually right there where the explosion took place. So what happened was, there was a young man who had just started working there. He's very new, and he was on a forklift, and he didn't have very much training on the forklift.
Sure.
Okay, so like back then, training for forklifts, I know because I gave all the training. Mm-hmm. I've never driven a forklift in my life, but I could have trained myself according to them. Like, you were certified if you answered all the questions right on the tests, and pretty much the answers were given to you. So it didn't take much to certify someone as a forklift driver. And so,
man, I took much appreciation in my forklift. No, I'm kidding.
I was mad.
No, I wasn't the best. I got stuck once too while I was using the forklift.
I legit wanted to learn how to operate the equipment, and I'm the secretary, and they're like, no, you know, like, you have no business out there. And I'm like, why not?
Right.
So anyway, so the guy was, I guess, turning, I don't know what he was doing, but the forks were out. And when he turned the corner, he turned too short, and it hit one of the pipes, the metal against metal, and it like broke the, it busted the pipe open, but it sparked when it did it. And the line was obviously flammable. Right. And so there was like an instant explosion. And my one of my foremans and my supervisor, also my father-in-law, were actually parked in the middle of the street in front of OL2. Like, they were like opposite of each other in the trucks, parked talking through the window.
Yes, yeah.
And so as soon as they saw the fire, they just took off. Every
man for himself.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
What's sad is my father-in-law had a heart condition. And so at some point he was forced to pull his truck over and walk. And by the time he made it out of, because they ended up going out of gate, I forget what number it is, the one that's on 35, not the one.
Okay, gate 6.
Yeah.
Yep.
They ended up having to walk out there from OL2. That's
a long walk. Yeah.
Quite a ways. And once they exited, they had to keep walking towards Palacios.
Mm-hmm.
And at some point, I want to say one of the first cutoffs to Olivia, or, that area, there was a cop car there. And when my father-in-law got to that cop car, he's like, I can't go any further. This is it. Like, I can't go. My heart hurts. Like, I can't breathe. And so he sat in the back seat of the cop car until we came and got him.
Wow.
Yeah. So anyway, so he tells us keep going. So we jump in the car. Again, it's my friend and one of my welders, which is one of our only single hand welders, and I've known him for so long. He's such an amazing person. Anyway, Archer gets in the car and we drove like a little ways, and he's yelling at me, this is far enough, this is far enough. And I'm like, okay. So I pull over and I call him again. He's like, where are you? And I'm like, I don't know. We're like 2 miles from gate 5. And he's like, you are not far enough. And I'm like, what do you mean? And he said, Frankie,
you'd be in Bay City.
Yeah. He's like, if one unit goes up, it's a 7-mile killing radius.
Mm-hmm.
He said, you are not far enough. Keep going. And I look over at Archer, and Archer goes, look, I built most of this plant. If it's going to go, I want to watch it go. I want front row seats. And I'm pregnant. I win. Get in the car.
Yeah. You're like, see, the thing about it is I have a child on the way.
Yeah.
So let's go.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Oh, my gosh. So this turned into some fun Formosa stories, which I'm sure, anyone who has spent time at Formosa
I got plenty.
Has a handful.
I have a lot.
I know that probably could be its own episode in of itself. And I do want to get some more time on your life and who you are, but I don't blame you. Formosa stories are fun.
Yeah.
I'm resisting the temptation to just like feed into it.
I
and
know.
Then we just
Yes.
And then, because it's
and I'm
it's a
trying
good time.
to keep it like unbiased too, like trying not
I know,
to get
you're like,
anybody
people
in
still
trouble.
work there.
Or
Yeah.
yeah.
But we're grateful,
Mm-hmm.
no doubt, for the work that we had there. I did want to ask, some of the information I had on you. You worked as a secretary, and then you said in quality control. Like, was that something that you did separately as well? Like you specifically were in quality control?
Well, when I was first trained,
okay,
at DDI,
okay,
I was trained to read blueprints and to do weld mapping and things of that nature, to try to take some of the stress and relief off of the people that were working in the office.
Yeah.
I was even trained how to go out in the field and locate every piece of pipe we were working on, which was
great. It's a very
great.
tedious thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so
I had the awesome privilege of doing the same.
Yeah.
You read your, oh my gosh, why am I blanking on this? You got PNIDs and, and you go out there and and you're like, where is this? Well, that's been demoed. We just unfortunately haven't updated our PNIDs, and you're like,
well, the owner of our company
thanks.
is an engineer, and he's a really good engineer.
Awesome.
And he loved mapping. Like when I first started, he would make from his ISOs, each job has the ISOs.
Mm-hmm.
He would take that and he would make a huge map of the entire job.
Yeah, that's impressive.
It was huge.
It's impressive.
And so we would track it there, and we would track it on the ISO because, that's what we had to turn into Formosa. But then that wasn't enough. Like, he would go and do each section of pipe. He would make a drawing, just a little small drawing, and we would give those to the welders every day. And so it became a part of our checks and balances. Like, he would draw it all out, and we would give it to the welder. The welder would have to put his, stencil and date and then sign off that he completed it that day. And then once it was completed, it was given to me.
Right.
And then I would take each one and enter it into the computer, put it on the ISOs, and then put it on his master drawing and keep track of all of that. And so when you start off, you don't know that that's not normal. That's not normal secretary work.
Oh, no. Well, I say that and because it sounds like they definitely were like, okay, you're capable.
Yes.
And with that came this growing responsibility.
Oh, yeah. And I'm so
exceeded
grateful for it because it taught me so much. Like, I learned so much. And Like, I didn't even realize that was a big deal then.
You're like, so when's this raise coming in? You're like, this was great.
Yeah, well, I tried that, and you know what? I got a raise, but
Good.
it wasn't in money.
Interesting.
He put me in a man lift and raised me 6 foot in the air.
Wow.
I am not
kidding. What a story to tell.
Yes, at 18. Yes, because he's such a funny, he was a funny person. He's no longer with us, but yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, what a champ to go along with that humor.
And so, like, you know, when I graduated, we had taken some of the first computer classes, you know, where they taught you Lotus, and I mean, that's old. We would started learning about like Excel and things, and so I had rare computer experience, so to speak. You know,
I would imagine that was definitely at that time, right?
Yeah, so they took advantage of that, and I'm so thankful that they did, because it really taught me a lot. I learned how to be organized, and you know, just I don't know, it just came like second nature, and so. You know, later on, that kind of turned into quality and control for me, which, you know, being a female, most of the men out there don't really want females out in the field.
Since you brought that up, then that was one of my questions. I want to know: do you think you had a unique experience working out at a chemical plant as a woman? I mean, you know, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. You're like, is the sky blue?
Yeah.
Is grass green?
Which is funny, because that's how my best friend and I became friends. We worked together at the plant.
Right.
And out there, women don't have a whole lot of respect for one another, because most of the women that were in positions, you know, other than fire watch, you know, were expected to have gotten those jobs by, you know, not by their ethics, you know what I mean? Like,
gotcha.
They didn't work their way up through blood, sweat, and tears like some of us, you know? And so when a woman like myself was put in some of those positions, it was automatically assumed that I was one of those women, and I wasn't.
Right. So you get to share your experience as someone. You're like, no, I literally just chipped away at the responsibilities given to me and earned each role that was entrusted to myself.
So like, her and I didn't get along with a lot of females out there.
You say Herb and I, or her and I?
Her and I.
Oh, okay. There was someone else that was another
Jerry
lady.
and I. Yeah. Jerry actually worked in the tool room. And I worked in the office.
I didn't know that about Jerry.
Yeah.
Okay.
She's so good at it too. Like, she's amazing. The things this woman, she can make anything work. It's crazy. Like, she could repair the tools, and she was very organized, and she's very, very efficient. And she talks a lot of crap, and a lot of people are intimidated by her, you know, because she's got that presence.
Yeah.
And you kind of have to out there, though. You do. You have to be one of the guys and be a girl at the same time, you know, and you just do. And yeah. So, yeah.
I believe you. No, I believe you.
And so that's something her and I bonded on, was that we weren't frilly-nilly like the others, you know. We weren't girly girls. We weren't sucking up or, you know, doing favors to get up in place. You know, we actually worked hard to get where we were. And so out of that respect blossomed a friendship that's lasted, 15 years?
That's awesome.
It's been a while. So, yeah.
So, you know, going back into, because like I said, I can probably keep pulling on that thread.
Yeah.
You know, I want to make sure I don't forget, and we can touch on it a little bit, and then we can probably circle back to it. But, you know, just a quick bio about like who you are, right? So, I mean, you have a family. So like right now you have more than one child. So not just Sarah's your child, but you also have an older son. So I don't know, what's the family scope look like right now?
Well, I have 5 children total, 2 that I've had of my own. And then I have 3 stepchildren that we call special kids. They're our special kids. They're my easiest births ever.
I didn't even think about seeing it that way. That's clever. Yeah.
And then I have a grandson by my oldest special daughter. And so, yeah, we have a pretty good sized family. I was married before I met JC. It was so funny. We did everything right the first time around. Like, we met, we dated for like 3 years before we ever got married. Then we got married, and then we had my son, which, by the way, I was not ever supposed to have children. I was told that at 18 that I would never have children. And so he was my miracle baby.
Absolutely.
And he was born on 9/11.
You have a 9/11 baby.
I have the 9/11 baby because there was no other baby born on that day in Victoria County.
Wow.
I'm not sure about Port Lavaca, but I know for sure in Victoria, there was a big boom that evening at midnight. Like, it was crazy. We got moved to a whole nother floor because, like, people were just coming in left and right. On. Yeah. So that was crazy. And then Sarah was I didn't think I could get pregnant again. So she was a big shock too. And then her due date was actually 6/6 of 06.
Pleasant.
So you have your first kid born on 9/11 and the second one's due date is 6/6/6. You know, you're like, oh my gosh.
You're like,
she was born on the 1st, just, you know, and barely. Yeah.
Man, so kind of easy to remember your child's birthday then.
Yeah, so we have a very large blended family.
So thanks for sharing that. Just to make sure, I wanted to make sure we didn't, you know, talk at length, and then it's like, man, you know, like I didn't even ask you, like, you know, what's their family scope look like? So, I'm grateful that you shared, you know, about, you know, what it looked like. My next question would be, what year did you graduate high school?
1997 from Calhoun.
All right, Calhoun. Mm-hmm. And you shared with me in some notes that I have on you is that you wanted to make it big by being a singer. You had aspirations. And I'm just kind of curious, like, how did you define, like what style of music did you sing? And then, like, what were your plans if you made it big? Like, what did that look like?
Okay, so I twang everything. I can sing like classical and be fine, but when it came to like my choice of music and my own style,
sure,
like I always put a twang to everything. So everything I sang sounded country, whether I wanted it to or not. And back then that was not cool. You know, you don't want to twang out rock. It doesn't work that way. It does now, but it didn't then. And so definitely country all the way, and a little bit of blues because I loved.
So you were like, this is what's going to work for me, my style naturally.
And fun fact, my stepmother has a cousin who was in the music business, and he was friends with like Willie Nelson, and I don't think you know who Mr. Gibson. I want to
Gibson. Okay,
it's not Mel, like because you know Mel Gibson, that's the actor. I can't remember his first name, but it's a Gibson, and he was a songwriter and producer in Nashville. And he used to write for Patsy Cline and some of the others, and that's the style of voice I had. I had a very big Patsy Cline style voice. Yeah, so. We did a demo when I was 16.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask.
Yeah, we did a demo with her cousin, and he sent it off to some radio stations and stuff. And I guess about a month later, I actually got a phone call at home from Willie Nelson. And my dad didn't believe that's who it was, so he hung up on him. Like, he called back like twice. It was crazy. And he wanted me to go to Nashville, to the Grand Ole Opry, where he wanted to set me up with different producers and stuff and like work with me. He wanted to take me under his wing and on the road. And because I was 16, my father was like, there's no way. I know y'all are all about drugs and alcohol and my daughter's not going. And he hung up, and that was that. He didn't tell me until I was older, like way older. But he made this comment my senior year. I had done my last Golden Review, and he's like, Nashville's calling for her. You know, like he didn't tell me any of that. Like I had no clue. And I was so mad because I was like, you know, if that was such an issue, my mother would have quit her job and we would have gone. Yeah. She would have come with me. But he didn't even give us that option. It was just like, that's it.
That's tough.
So yeah, like I legit wanted to be a singer and was decent at it. I mean, I enjoyed it. I loved it.
Well, and you would have been paired up with coaches and people that actually like, well, and not to... and not to like, you know, put salt on wound, but Willie Nelson called twice.
Yes.
That's
crazy.
That is crazy.
Yes.
Well, you definitely have, and I mean that's why it's probably like we probably can't fit, you know, if we were to give you, you know, that time to share your story. I mean that would not fit in one episode, but you know, it's definitely a lively time, you know, but I didn't, that is news to me. Didn't know that you had.
Yeah, I don't talk
Willie
about it.
Nelson
Well, I lost my voice. I've been smoking since I was 14.
Okay.
Know?
So you think that
and then just not being in it as much. Unfortunately, my first husband and I were very into music together. We had a band, you know, like we loved music. He played and sang and like, it was just awesome.
Oh.
And my husband now, who I'm very much still in love with, is just not a music person at all. Like just does not get it in the same capacity. But that is still something I share with my children. Me and my children all, I say my children, my two,
Kyle and Sarah, and
they're very, very much into music. Kyle plays.
Kyle plays percussion.
He's a drummer and he's learning how to play the guitar, which he's doing really well. And now he's going to teach mom how to play, which is how his dad got me to go on a date with him. He was going to actually teach me to play, never did. So that's kind of funny.
You're already hooked in.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, we'll get to it one day.
Yeah. And then Sarah sings.
Yeah.
She sings for the church.
Yeah.
She was in choir, but she wasn't enjoying it, so she's not doing that anymore. But that's okay, because she's still in it. She still loves music. We still love to listen.
So they knew the story of you wanting to be a singer? Is that something you shared with them?
Sort of.
Okay.
Sarah doesn't really have a whole lot to do with mom. Like, anything mom-related is not cool. Like, we're at that stage.
Wow.
But
like,
me
hey,
and
your
Kyle,
mom got called by Willie Nelson twice. You want to hear
I don't think she believes it, and I don't blame her.
She's like, stories.
Like, you just, like I said, I lost it. Like, I don't play, sing as much, and I've gotten real quiet and hushed about it. And like when we do sing loud in the car, we just sing obnoxiously and have fun,
Yeah.
So yeah.
And so for one, you also shared that you were turning your attention away from. So this was a very real part of your life, and I'm sure some of what's going to follow will circle back to some of these things. But you said, you know what, I'm going to look at being a parent.
Yes.
So that was the turning point.
Yes.
Okay.
That was so much more important to me than anything else, just to have that family.
When did you make that decision? Was it like when you were pregnant, or was it when after you had, Kyle or your firstborn, that it clicked and you said, okay, this is just what I need to do?
Well, when you're told at 18 that you can't have children, that just kind of demolishes all hope.
Sure.
It really does. And I wanted 5 kids.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
Always, I come from 5.
Yeah.
Both of my parents come from 5. I loved the chaos. I loved the constant. There was always someone around. There's always something going on.
Yeah.
I love the camaraderie. I wanted that,
Right.
and to be told that I cannot even try, there's no, at 18, you're young, your life is first starting out, And so that was a hard hit. And so when I found out there was an opportunity for us to get pregnant with my first husband, I was just in love with it. I was like, whatever I get, I don't even care. We had some issues with Kyle early on in the pregnancy where they were talking about possibly terminating the pregnancy because he was supposed to have severe Downs. And I was like, I don't care if he's born with just a head. I'm going to love him no matter what, because, if God bless me with this kid, whatever affliction he comes with, I'm going to love him no matter what. That was it. I was sold.
Yeah.
It was it. So, yeah. Does that answer your question?
It does. No,
okay.
it does. So from the get-go, as soon as that, you got a scent of being able to be a parent. You said, okay, this other, because you were saying with your first husband, you were actually already playing music, right? So
oh yeah.
So where would you play? What your shows look like?
We played all over the place. We used to play on Sundays at the beach. I don't remember what it was called. It was the old Crow's Nest. I don't know what it's called at the time, but it wasn't the Crow's Nest. It was Banana Bay Bar or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
We used to play on Sundays right there at the beach. Everybody would come out. Everybody would come on Sundays to the beach. It was beach day in Port Lavaca, and we would sit up at the little bar where everybody would go to the bathroom, get drinks and food, and just jam out. We'd have a good time.
Yeah.
And then we also had a few weddings and some parties and things just around wherever.
Right.
Yeah.
So
nothing big. I mean, he named our band Sling Blade of all things.
Okay, that was my next question. By the way, what's your name? And where could we find a recording?
Free beer was taken, and so Sling Blade it was. And
Sling Blade.
There was a movie. Okay?
Yeah, Sling Blade. Is that the one with? Oh my gosh.
Yes. Yeah. He's like,
yes.
Yeah. That's the one. Yeah.
I finally saw that movie maybe 4 years ago. I don't know, not that long ago.
Yeah.
I was late to
It's kind of crazy. Yeah. It's one of those movies you have to at least see once just at least once to say you did. And we named our band after it. I don't know.
Sling Blade.
Yeah. Yeah, it was crazy.
So from there, it went to full-time parent, but then you worked like.
Well, we
then
still
we went
had our
back to the
band for a
Formosa
little
story.
while when Kyle was born. You know, for a little bit. It didn't last a whole lot. I don't know. Just yeah.
So, at that time, if you were to make it big, and maybe you said it, but like, did you have like these specific plans? Like, man, I want to get out of this small town and like do these specific things, or it was just like for the love of the passion of music? Like
it was mostly for the love and the passion of music. And honestly, like I lived a very sheltered life. And so I was terrified of everything. Like I couldn't even go to the grocery store by myself. Like it was weird. So for me, it was never pack up your stuff and just go make it happen. Because I would, not unless somebody went with me.
And that's where you're like, my mom would be my partner here.
Yeah. So I went straight to work.
Yeah.
Instead, it was just like, what do you do? Well, I need money for gas. So you might as well.
Then you're able to go through the rite of passage and of Formosa and accrue some fun stories there.
Oh, yes. Plenty. Yes.
Yeah. Now, being raised here in Port Lavaca, you then spent some time, 10 years, right? You lived in Victoria?
It was about 10 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what like sparked your move and then like rubber band you back here to PL?
Well, my mom and dad separated and split up and got divorced when I was, I want to say 15 to like 17. The divorce was very long. It was ridiculous. Anyway, and he moved to Victoria like immediately. Because he already had a girlfriend by the time they separated. When he left my mom, he moved directly in with his girlfriend. They swear to God they weren't cheating, but whatever. Anyway, so he moved to Victoria. And so throughout the next couple of years, it was like this pull and tug between my mom and dad.
Right.
And at one point, I had to live with my dad because my mother wasn't here. And so I lived in Victoria, but because I had always gone to school here in Port Lavaca, I would drive back and forth.
Jeez. Okay.
For like 2 years. So
yeah.
So it wasn't that big of it. Like, I'd already lived there for a couple of years.
Right.
So yeah.
And so you have, that experience, unfortunately, of where it's like, okay, due to life situations out of your control, bounced you to another town, and then at some point you said, okay, Port Lavaca is where I may end up hanging my hat, even though
which is funny because I didn't always like Port Lavaca. I had like a really colorful childhood, I guess. I was miserable.
Okay.
Like music was one of my
you can escape.
Escapes,
yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
And so like before when I would come to Port Lavaca, even driving in every day going to the high school, like I felt like there was always a cloud hanging over Port Lavaca. I'd be driving on 87. There was this big old cloud every time I came in. It was like, I did not want to live there. I wanted out. I did not care.
Yeah.
If it was 30 minutes away or if it was, 10 hours, I didn't care. I wanted out.
Yeah.
And so, I was very happy and humbled to be just in Victoria. So,
right.
So like whenever, I don't know, we had some massive stuff happen in our family and it kind of brought us back to Port Lavaca kicking and screaming. And
drug here.
Yeah, I did not want to be here. I did not. It took me a while to just look at my childhood from a different perspective.
Sure.
And kind of come to terms with it and then fall in love with this town in the way that I feel like my parents probably did. And that's probably why we were here the whole time, What
were some of the things that like happened over that time where you were like just basically trying to force yourself to be comfortable with the fact that you lived here? And then, maybe it was subtle or maybe not so subtle, but like what were some things that happened that you were like, okay, maybe this place isn't that bad. Maybe I can't call it home.
Honestly, there's always been a good handful of people that have been just absolutely amazing, genuine, kind-hearted, loving people who have essentially become like family to me,
Okay.
And looking back, on my childhood, I was able to see that no matter what was going on in my little world, there was always these blessed people, these awesome, amazing angels that were put in my life and made things a lot better than what they could have been. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then the fact that I had kids, I'm fixing to put my kids in school here. You know, if I hate it, how do you think they're going to be?
Right.
You know, and I'm a big fan of, you kind of create the world that you're living in. And so I had to be okay with it for them to be okay with it, you know?
Yeah.
And so I had to start finding things that I liked about it so that I could help them to feel a little more comfortable, you know, and kind of accept it a little bit. And then, you know, after a while, you get tired of complaining.
Okay.
You know, you get tired of, oh, I hate this about this and I hate this. And after a while, I was like, you know what? Instead of being a part of the problem, why not be a part of the solution? And then what does that look like?
Mm-hmm.
Well, you know, we can't fix everything, obviously.
Right.
But it starts with just being, you know, kind to people. You know, just a simple act of kindness can make a huge difference, you know?
Yeah.
And so, and then I guess all of that and all the experience I've had also put me on the track of wanting to help people not have to go through and feel what I felt in my family situations growing up. And so I wanted to be there. You know, I wanted to be a part of the solution. I wanted to help people.
So
you know?
that I want to park on for a bit because, you know, that's one of the things that has stood out since, you know, I met you not that long ago, you know, maybe a couple or handful of years, you know, recently that, you know, we've gotten to know each other. And I mean, one of the big things that had stood out about you is that, highly, you know, your empathy for people and your desire to want to help them. Mm-hmm. It was very like, not that it was overwhelming, but it was,
can be.
it could be in some ways because, you know, it was almost like there was not a need that escaped your like radar. And so it's like, hey, so, you know, there's a family here that could really benefit if we were able to come through or someone can come through in this kind of way.
Yeah.
And then it was like, and at the same breath, it would be like, but also we can't forget about, and then, you know, you would bring up like maybe 3 or 4 other, you know, needs. And there was this drive. It was like this like urgency of, hey, look, if no one does it, then who?
Yeah.
Okay. And so then if not us, then who?
Yeah.
All right. So then I just want to know, like, is something going to be done about this or not? And so again, that showed a true, genuine, like what stood out to me was a true, genuine drive to see like something actual and practical done for people. Like it wasn't just this itch. Like I know you said, you know, your desire was, you know, from your experience. So you want to be for others what, you know, potentially yourself could have been benefited from in your past. And so it did show me like, okay, this person does want to see these people benefit from what they're lacking or receive love or feel appreciated. And that for me was like, okay, so this, for one, it's not an act, you know, for one, it's not a, you say that because you want someone to go, hey, that's great. And like pat you on the back. I'm so glad you care about people. And then you can feel good about yourself.
Yes.
No, it was genuinely like, hey, so are we doing
like
something for them
I'm telling
or not?
people over and over again, like I'm serious. Like if you need help, I will be there.
And you will, and you have, and you know, and even at, you know, I know I can be guilty of this, but sometimes, you know, we can look and then sometimes miss some of our own care, you know, and you know, not trying to pick on you on that, but it's just that you do have this others first mentality,
yes.
and so that for, you know, I was like, man, okay, this is legit. Like this is what comes with Frankie here, you know, and it's a compliment. It really is. But you know, I did want to spend some time on that too, just to give you that, you know, for those who may see you out in the community or who get to know you or maybe spending time listening to this and getting to hear, yes, those things about you working at Formosa or wanting to become a singer. It's like, man, that's all fun. Those are like great,
they were important then, and now
things.
They're not important to me. Yeah, well, they're just not. They're not a part of who I am. I mean, they are, but they're not they're not who I am today.
Right.
You know, like my focus is so different than what it was back then.
And it's fascinating.
Yeah.
And that's why I just want to give people a heads up. You know, if you meet her and if you see her in the community or get to know her, you know, you're generally going to meet someone that, you know, has this desire to see you succeed and do well. And, you know, I would definitely believe that you bringing that to our community, right? You bodes well for us.
Well, thank you.
So,
and I want to say that Parkway has really nurtured that for me. It's given me the opportunity to see some of those things, come true, come to light, and given me a voice and a platform, and also have just encouraged me to continue to lean into that. And so, not that, any of the other churches hadn't, but I felt like I could really blossom and grow so much more at Parkway where I couldn't at other churches, because the opportunity to serve just wasn't as focused on as it is at Parkway. And so, for me, I feel like I don't think I would be as open and
gotcha
and as able to do and as vocal about where my heart is, had it not been for Parkway.
So in addition to coming to our church and feeling like you can plug in that way, what were some, because I know you brought up the Salvation Army, and you said that was kind of like a catalyst for queuing in some of those things you do now. I mean, what were some other places you were able to feel like you can be that positive impact for people? I mean,
I did get to mentor a little bit.
Okay.
I'm not even sure if the high school does it anymore, but they used to have a mentoring program for different people. And the idea is to, I guess, kids that are struggling and just need some direction, or, they try to find positive role models in the community to come in and spend an hour a week with a student and just, try to pour into them a little bit and encourage them.
Right.
And I got to do that. And that was fun. I enjoyed doing that. That was nice. They also have tutoring programs. I didn't do the tutoring part, but I did do the mentoring, which was really neat. And then I was lucky to have a company that would let me, take off.
Yes, because I was going to say you probably needed a place where they would be flexible, let you go do that.
Yeah.
And
honestly, nobody really wants a housewife to come mentor, their kid at school. So I haven't done it since I've been at home, but that is something that helped kind of push me towards that and help me realize that, I guess that I'm a good listener and I give decent advice. And then, of course, I did small groups, before we even joined Parkway, we did small groups at home. And then we got to do that at Parkway, and I got to get involved with the youth there, both elementary age, junior high, high school, all of it. And so, I've been kind of finding out where my groove is, through all that, and just getting involved.
And that's where I've seen you serve firsthand, is with students and with even young adults, and so you've definitely found a place to connect with our younger crowd here. Now it's interesting because now you have a daughter who's of that, so you've also had to navigate that too, where it's like, well, what do you do when you're, it's kind of like, I guess Melissa may run into that if it would ever so happen for Micah to be in her class or something, that'd be interesting.
I still blame Steve for that, because we're at our youth group, right, one night, and I had taught Sarah's group for 2 years at this point.
Oh, yeah.
And Steve's like, hey, Sarah, is it weird that your mom's always the leader of your group? And Sarah's like, yes. And I'm like, thanks a lot. After that, she's like, do you have to be my leader next year? And I'm like, really, Steve?
Yeah. Thanks, Steve.
Yeah.
Shout out to one of our great, our former Port Lavaca director here for what is it? Stirring the nest.
Yes. He did good.
But, it's been great to, have you on board. And so you've been a part of the mentoring program. I've known, you to try to find, and things in the community. I mean, is there any other local initiatives here in the community that you were a part of in Port Lavaca?
Well, I did some work with, when the kids get involved in school and you have different boosters and things like that. I've done that. And then Sarah was in the theater, so I've done a few things at the theater, which is it's neat because it gets you connected with different people in the community, and that kind of leads to other opportunities and things like that. So
maybe you can break that down for us. I would like to ask, what's it been like since you made the decision to, it's not like you haven't had success at these other jobs. You consciously made this decision, right?
That was totally my husband's decision.
Oh, okay.
He wanted to be the breadwinner, and he wanted to be the one that brought home the bacon, you
Okay.
know? And so he like requested me to be a housewife. And at the time I'm like, no.
Okay. So
So,
that's what made the shift.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That was totally fun. Like working.
Sure.
Yes. It was such a struggle to get used to not like being a complete dictator at home.
Right.
Like I was obsessed with cleaning. So when the kids would play and they'd make a mess, I'm like, you need to clean that up. And they're still
you're
playing.
like,
I'm like, oh, I need to quit. You know, it was crazy. It took me a while.
Wow.
And then I've worked off and on, but it was important to him just as it was important to me to be, you know, as much a part of our kids growing up as possible. And I'm very blessed and lucky to have a husband that was very eager
Right.
to give me that opportunity. So
Because especially now, right, that, you know, the norm has been and has crept into, you know, I know like our household, Melissa and I, you know, 2-income household, you know, we both work, you know, even before me shifting from my work from Formosa to do now, you know, to do what I do now, it was, you know, that seemed to be our trajectory. We're fine with it. And we're like, yeah, you know, we can keep doing this. Micah's around, Melissa still works. And then some, for me, it's out of that necessity. It's like, hey, like, this isn't
I've
an
had to
obligation.
work too when they're little, and the guilt is just overwhelming when you realize that some stranger is raising your kid. You know,
And
that's
so,
hard.
right? Because not, you know, I was blessed growing up. You know, I had both my grandparents around, so I'm super blessed. Like I realize that even that, in of itself is rare.
Yeah.
Or I hate to say rare. I mean, I know there's with that, but that's just not the case across the board. And so, you know, I really didn't go to daycare too much. It was, you know, it was either grandma and grandpa A, grandma and grandpa B. But to get back to you, you know, I guess I'm curious to hear, you know, maybe you can share is just, you know, what were some of the pros and cons? I mean, you're spending more time with your kids, which is huge, and that's golden. So, I mean, you know, I guess it sounds like you can attest to that, that is a, like, one of the bigger perks of making that shift from working to being with your kids and raising them as
but it's not
24/7 as
all
you can.
like sunshine and roses either. Like it's tough.
Right.
It's tough. They drive you insane. And after a while, you don't realize how much you're starved for adult conversations, you know, or like you lose yourself in it sometimes. And sometimes like silly stuff gets to you like where it shouldn't because you're just so involved, you know.
Right.
And now, like, you know, Sarah's my last one. She's a teenager. Oh, she's a teenager. And she's a teenage girl. So, like, by right, she automatically doesn't like her mom. Yeah. And so it's like just me and her at home all the time. So that's a lot of fun. But at the same time, like, I love the fact that no matter what she's got going on, I can be there. I can see every concert, every game. I'm there, whether she wants me to be or not, cheering her on. And what's kind of cool is at first, it was annoying because, like I said, she's a teenager. She don't like mom. It's just like, God, do you have to go to all my games? And I'm like, yes, I do. And then it got to the point where like her friends were like, hey, is your mom coming? Can she bring those snacks she brought? Or
man, your mom's cool.
Yeah. And then I would start cheering for her friends, and her friends are like, man, you got the coolest mom. And Sarah's like, no, I don't, you know, and she'd get mad because they liked me. Yeah. And then after a while, it was like, you know what, I guess I do kind of have a cool mom, but don't tell her I said that, you know? So that's kind of where we are now.
Cool.
It's like and it's funny because I don't even tell her or say anything. Like she automatically knows. And just the fact that she knows I'm going to be there no matter what.
I had to check to make sure she wouldn't come over here and end this.
You know what I mean? She knows that I'm going to be there. And just knowing that she has that security, whether she appreciates it or not, is everything for me.
Good.
Yeah.
And so you've had that experience with Kyle performing and I mean, and he's done very well with the Calhoun band, recently graduated this past year.
Yeah, in 2020.
2020 graduate, so he got hit with all the funk that you know,
are we going to
graduate? Are we going to walk in 20? Yeah. And so your, you know, experiences as a housewife, you know, stay-at-home mom, you know, you've had to be taxi, you've had to I mean, that's its own full-time thing. Yeah, that really is. Because
I think my least favorite is chaperone. I do not like chaperone.
What for the school events or just
no, like being a chaperone for my kids. It sucks.
Oh yeah, feeling like you're on call. Like, oh, you got to go to school.
Because you were a kid once, know, and there's a part of you that wants them to have the ability to be a kid.
Yeah.
But you also know they have the ability to be manipulative and to be, and so there's like a level of how much do I let them get away with, and how much do you know what I mean?
When does this it's just, hammer drop?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it's tough. It's tough.
And then
apparently I've spoiled my youngest too much, and so now I'm having to like readjust. I've given her too much rope, Yeah. And so that's been fun.
I'm sure many parents here could totally relate.
Oh, I'm sure.
So this is, that's the cool thing. If you're a parent, you totally get it. This isn't, I don't think there's anyone out there that's going like, how could you let that happen?
It's a different world that they're living in too. I mean, like we can relate to an extent, but oh my goodness, like technology has gotten so crazy. Like, I don't know. I think it's so much tougher to be a teenager now than it was when we were growing up. Like when I was growing up, I'm much older than you, but you know what I mean? Like,
well, and I don't mean this as like an ageist question to ask, but what I do want to ask though, specifically here at Calhoun, because this is where you went to school.
Yeah.
I mean, what was it like for you going to school in Calhoun, in comparison to what you see now with your daughter? I mean, like what?
Well, I mean, it's a small town. It's got your typical good and bad. You got your bullies and you got your cliques and that kind of, I don't know. I think we had a very good class.
Like a fun class?
Like not just a fun class, but a very supportive class. Like,
cool.
Back when I was in high school, they still had like the daycare in the high school because there were so many people getting pregnant. And so a way to keep them in school was to have the daycare at the school so you could still attend and still
get your degree.
Yeah,
graduate.
And so like we had a few students in our class that, were pregnant or had had a child. And so.
And you were there in the 90s. So I remember, you can correct me if I'm wrong, statistically, I think Calhoun was pretty up there. When it came
we had quite a bit. Like my class, though, we only had like, I don't think we had that many. We did have a few drop out, but the ones that stayed, like, we could have been like everybody else and like made fun of them or, picked on them or didn't hang out with them because they're not cool anymore or whatever.
Their life changed.
But instead, I really feel like we embraced them and cheered them on and that wasn't very normal, I guess, but But I loved that about our class. It wasn't.
And that's what you meant by supportive.
As a group, yes, we were very supportive and, a caring. I mean, we still had people that were being bullied and people that were mean. I mean, of course, but I was not one of the popular kids. Okay, I just wasn't.
Okay.
But I still had like I didn't have a group. I belonged to a lot of different groups. Like I was just Miss Friendly. I hopped around from place to place. That's just who I still am.
I was about to say, I'm like, I don't think you really fell off that. Yeah.
But yeah.
So now compared to what you see with Sarah, I mean, do you think, I know there's technology, right?
Well, it's so much different because of technology in the aspect, like, when we were growing up, we didn't have cell phones. Okay. Sure. They were just coming out with pagers. When I was graduating, pagers, and they did have cell phones, but it was those big block phones, those huge bag phones, with the big old long antenna. Yeah. Like they didn't have like, what we're used to now.
You couldn't discreet and text.
And you definitely couldn't take pictures and things like that. Everything now is so instant. Mm-hmm. Like for me, like I really feel like we kind of had it a little bit easier because if somebody took a not so flattering photo of someone.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, we could tear the photo up and it'd be gone.
It's gone.
It's gone.
Like,
and nowadays, that's impossible. I mean, the worst that would happen is somebody would write something about you or put your phone number on a stall somewhere. Like that's as bad as it got for us, and it was still localized.
Right.
And nowadays nothing's localized and nothing. Kyle got into a little tiff. It was a total misunderstanding. But this young man got offended because someone said that Kyle said something that he didn't say. Mm-hmm. And he clocked Kyle. And the person that went and told him that knew, like they set him up and they videoed it Okay, so that's how much they knew. Like they videoed
They wanted
him
to
being
instigate.
punched.
Yeah.
So he was a freshman when this happened, and the senior, it was one of his best friends that was a senior, punched him.
Jeez.
Okay, and this was in first period. Okay.
Yeah.
By third period, I think he said, he called me crying. Everybody in the school had seen the video because it had been shoved around, like it had been sent out that fast.
Man.
And so I had to go up there and rescue him, bring him home because
that's
he was
awful.
just mortified.
Yeah, no.
Like that, yes, word of mouth is one thing,
But
but
then
the video of it,
Yes.
oh my goodness. You know what I mean? And then it's still something someone can pull up even
Right.
now,
I'm sure. Yeah.
And so for me, like that's so much worse, it's so
Yeah.
much worse than what we dealt with.
I remember the like gut wrenching feeling I would have whenever something embarrassing would happen at the beginning of
Yes.
school.
Who saw?
And I went to a very
Yes.
small school as well,
Mhm.
and even small in Calhoun. And I, would recall it didn't take long before lunch, it's already campus
Gossip.
spread,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because it's just almost kind of like work, right?
Yeah.
You try to pass the time, and students, you got the things that you just carry yourself on with, and then it's like, oh, okay, here's fresh off the press, and then it would spread. I can't imagine, in addition to that, the unfortunate reality of going, okay, not only is it just words, and not only do people know about it, but they're watching it and replaying it and laughing.
Yes.
And then I'm going to go home, and I know that people are probably
Yes.
still spreading this around. That is different.
And see, that's another thing too, is like when we dealt with bullying at school, we
Right.
could go home and it would stop,
Yeah.
because we're at home, we're in a safe place now.
Yeah.
There's no one here to talk or, whatever. You could escape from it
Right.
essentially. And now it's not like that because everyone is so connected to this social media and stuff that even when you go home, it's still very much a part of life,
And so as a parent, then, how have you done your best to, it sounds like you took him from school, you were there to console him, try to cheer him up. I mean, what are some other things that you've looked at as a parent that you were like, okay, all right, things are different since I was in school, and now I have to just constantly constantly evolve to be as
educate yourself. You have to educate yourself. You have to stay up with it. Like for me, like I'm very much involved with my kids' lives. They probably don't like it as much, but I do. I get to know who's pouring into my kid. I get to know their friends, their cliques, who they hang out with, who they like. Like when my kids first started wanting to date, even like right now, Sarah's in that mode where she's not allowed to date, but we call it school dating. You can have like a boyfriend, but it stays in school, right? But even with that comes with a set of rules that she just has to deal with, which is basically, I'm very much a part of that relationship.
right.
You have to be an open book with me.
Yeah.
Or it doesn't happen. And even Kyle was that way. So we discuss when we like someone, right?
Yeah.
And then we kind of do this thing where we do the checks and balances. Like, what do you like about them? What do you not like about them? Are they a good fit? That kind of thing. So we can kind of process a little bit before. And then, as the relationship happens, we talk about the good and the bad. They got in a fight today. Well, what was the fight about?
Right.
Is it worth fighting over? Whatever. And so I'm very much involved in their lives. Like I said, I get to know their friends. I encourage them to come over to the house so I can meet them, and I give them their time, to themselves, but I still try to get to know who they are. And the reason why is because when things start going wrong, like this year, Sarah is a freshman and everything changed. And I kept telling her it would, but it's been so drastic. Like it's been a drastic change for her and her friend dynamic. And it's been devastating to her. She's such a bubbly person and very friendly and outgoing. And now she's limited on friends and she's kind of closed off. And so I have to try to keep her from getting too closed off, But I would have to say, like I said, educate yourself, get involved, know who's doing what, and encourage the best that you can. Like with Sarah, I'm constantly reminding her of what's okay and not okay to post. Even not even just about herself, but like when she's mad, like I remind her that what you put on the internet stays on the internet. So you don't want to vent. You don't want to talk crap about somebody on social media because you definitely don't want that done to you.
Yeah.
And you don't want to say something out of anger that you can essentially not take back, you know?
Right.
And so like those kinds of things to me is the best we can do. You
and
know?
that's universal for adults. I think, unfortunately, it would be tough for anyone in that life stage as being a young teenager because you're trying to look at adults to be that model.
And you're
probably
essentially called
horrendously
cool too. You know, if you think about it, that's another thing. Watch some of the things your kids watch. Okay. Watch some of these YouTube posts and TikTok videos that are essentially influencing them. I mean, ultimately, that's what people want. You know, they want you to be ugly. They want you to be.
Well, it's easy to feed into that, right? So any controversy, anything that's going to get clicks,
exactly,
we can sell ourselves for.
And so trying to help her fight against that norm to not be like that, you know, even though that's what's cool, that's what's in, you know, they're not showing you the guilt that comes along with it and the shattered friendships that come along with it. And, you know.
Well, and this is where I'm going to try to make this a little bit, you know, so we don't have Sarah's ears so red right now.
Yeah.
But I would say, for parents, you know, listening, it's great to hear another parent share, you know, just what their experience is. And because, you know, I think we're all trying to figure that out, you know, especially like you said, with, you know, just the rise of just different new mediums and of how people connect. It can be very overwhelming. And then we have our family that is living out their experiences right before our eyes. And we're trying to like, okay, at what point do I pull the trigger and, you know, make these decisions, or how can I invest? And hopefully the time that I take with them, you know, build like a strong foundation for them to survive in this wild west that's known as, you know, the present and beyond. And so, you know, I'm glad you shared that, but I do want to make it pretty clear. It is very important for us to also take that ourselves as adults. You know, the whole like think before we speak. And again, this past year has been a great litmus test of, you know,
that's another thing, is trying to hold yourself to the same standard that you hold your kids to.
Yeah, isn't that fun?
That's not always easy. But that's kind of another way that I parent too, is if I'm going to ask them to do it, then I've got to do it too.
Yeah.
You know, like if I want them to call me ma'am, I call them ma'am. You know?
Right.
If I want to say yes, sir, no, sir, I say yes, sir, and no, sir to them. I mean, monkey see, monkey do, you know?
Yeah.
And you're right. I see a lot of people, you know, adult people who need to learn the same etiquette, you know?
Well, and that's why I feel for, you know, teens or young kids who, you know, they look up at their parental, you know, or person of influence. And, you know, I'm ready to get my butt kicked, you know, whenever my kid has opinions of his own and grows up. Again, he's only 11 months, but a decade's going to fly. Oh my gosh.
I'm playing.
Where, I mean, like you said, they're going to monkey see, monkey do. They're going to model. And so any kind of argument that I could even try to attempt to make as far as a justification for my actions or attitude or whatever's displayed in front of them or whatever they get a whiff of as far as, you know, what my patterns may be, I'm going to have to eat, you know, and try to learn and grow and be like, okay, you know what, you're right. You're seeing something that's a blinder, and I'm also trying to grow and learn just as I'm encouraging you to. And, you know, let's hopefully try to remember we're on the same team as a family and encourage each other to do the best with one another. And easier said than done.
Yes.
But yes, as adults, online etiquette or just how we treat other people is important.
It is. It's very important. Especially because I'm one of those people, if I'm going to hold you to that standard, like, you know, you treat others the way you want to be treated kind of thing. Like, I seriously believe that. I believe that if I treat you with respect, then I can expect respect from you and vice versa. And so, like, for me, I try to be as respectful as I can, even when I'm upset, which isn't always easy, but that's kind of what makes it better, is when it's not easy, when you're able to, you know, how cool is it when you're like, hey, I lost my temper and I got really, really mad, and I expect you as my child to do these things. And I did that today. Like, I held my tongue and I acted properly.
Right.
And I didn't make a butt of myself. I don't have any regrets about it. You know, like, I can look back at the situation and say, I'm proud of how I handled it, you know, and that's what I ask for you. You know, how cool is it that you can actually say, hey, I did that. And so when I ask you to do it, I'm not asking you to do something that I myself cannot do.
It's completely from a place of experience.
Yes.
Yeah. And well said. Yeah, no, well said. That, because then you actually get to celebrate some victories yourself.
Because it does feel good to know that, you know, we all have regrets. And that's one of my mottos in my life. Like, I was telling Sarah, you know, it's really good to have that kind of motto, to live your life with no regrets. And the way you do that is you think about what you're doing before you do it, you know, what you're saying before you say it. Because ultimately, what matters most is the opinion of the person looking back in the mirror. Like, if I can't look at that person and be proud of who they are, then it's not worth it.
So, you know, I think you're kind of now going to the territory of sharing some. No. Just sharing some words of wisdom, you know, through your life experience.
Oh yeah.
And so,
sorry, I do that.
No, it's good. You know, you're sprinkle them in there.
Yeah.
You know, we'll make sure and highlight them. You know, as people enjoy, you know, just what your life has brought forward as far as what you've been able to take from it.
Yeah.
And so while we're on there, I mean, if since you do have the mic and what is, if you can choose one thing, like what's the one thing that if, you know, someone gave you the mic and the world was listening, that you would like to share with other people, you know, kind of like to take with them? Not to put you, I mean, I am putting you on the spot, but you probably
Just
have.
Love one another.
Okay.
Love one another. You know, hate spreads faster. I get that. Okay.
Yeah.
But love lasts longer.
Yeah.
I mean, ultimately, we all want to be loved. We all want to be accepted. You know, anyone who says not is probably lying to themselves, you know.
Gotcha.
But we do. We want to be loved. And so, you know, sometimes when tempers flare and you know, you don't see eye to eye with someone, understand they're still a human being. You know, we're
Right.
all human. And we should ultimately still be entitled to have our own opinions and our own insights. And it's okay that we don't agree. It's okay that we don't. And that's what makes us better, I think, as people, is that we don't agree all the time.
Right.
You know, that's what helps us to mold and shape things differently, you know?
Yep.
But just love one another. I wish, like, right now in 2021, 2020 was rough. Now we're in 2021 and we're watching our government just, I'm so appalled, and it's so ridiculous the way that it's acting, and our country is just responding. Yeah. And I just wish that we had more people with louder voices to just love one another, you know?
Yeah. And so I'm so glad you shared that, and I am glad that if there was this one thing that you could share, it would you know, circle about love, and I mean, it couldn't be more timely.
Yeah.
You know, with how things are, and so I mean, yeah, I would hope that other listeners would join us in that. I mean, that is personally, I would not try to steal it, but I'm, you know, as that being my one thing, but it's your one thing. But I guess what I'm trying to do is give it that. Yes, I totally agree with you on that, because I believe we need that. The tricky thing is it's going to take people like us to start that within our own neighbors.
Well, let me tell you, you know, there's been a lot of people who have gone on, like, I'm a Facebooker.
Yeah.
I'm just recently getting acquainted with TikTok. It's been fun, but I'm big time.
You open that can of worms,
yes,
TikTok
like,
now?
that's been fun. Yeah. But you know, I've seen my friends and my family fight and argue over their preferred president.
Sure. It becomes a gladiator match.
I have seen people unfriend and block longtime friends and family members over their differences of opinion over our president.
Yep.
Someone they don't even know personally.
Right.
Like, they just let it go. You know, like, that's sad, Sam. That is sad. You know, the Black Lives Matter thing.
Yeah.
That infuriated so many people on both sides of that fence.
Right.
And, one thing that I did not do this entire election, I did not go on Facebook and tell everybody who I wanted to vote for president.
Right.
Not that I was afraid to. I just felt like it was inappropriate because I knew if I had posted one way or the other, I would lose friends. I would lose people that I cared about, people that I admire, because I don't believe the same things they believe. And that's okay. It's okay to not believe that. But to me, it's not that important. It is not that important to lose my friendships and my love for someone over.
Right.
It's just not worth that to me. But apparently half the country thinks that it is. And that's so sad. It breaks my heart.
That was one of the things for sure we're going to talk about forever.
Yeah.
When it comes from history looking back at 2020 and going into 2021, the divisiveness into the heights in which it reached over everything.
Yeah.
Like it if it wasn't coronavirus, it was, yes, Black Lives Matter, and also, the conversation that I would say that the idea that, okay, again, it goes back to then, what are we going to do? And let's have a conversation, but just back it up with actions when it came to social justice.
Yes.
And then leading into the election, it's like, oh my gosh, by every hurdle that you hurdled was a bigger hurdle. And unfortunately, what was not okay, but was embraced by some folks, is the division, in the sense that, okay, I guess this is where we're not just going to agree to disagree, or we're not just going to disagree, or we're not just going to have a conversation so we can understand each other's side a little bit better. We're just going to go the route of not communicating anymore, unfriending on Facebook, maybe not getting invited for dinner, maybe not, being in our Christmas card list, or actually joining each other for the holidays now because it's just too tender of a thing.
Yes.
And I would imagine there'd be some listening to this right now that was probably an experience that they had, where either someone unfriended them.
Yeah, they're probably still raw.
It's probably still raw, or they were the ones that said, man, I feel like what I'm hearing is too toxic. Like I'm having to let them go now. Mm-hmm. And it is unfortunate that it came down to that for many people this year. And I hope we can heal, right?
Well, I mean, if you think about it, though, the situation that we're under as a country over the last year has been horrific, and it's terrifying, and I feel like people have the right, and it's understandable that you have a lot of fear and anxiety over what's going on, and what does that look like for our future? Like, I totally get that. But to turn on one another and to attack one another is not going to solve the problem.
Right.
It's not, it's just going to make our life that much harder, Yeah. And so I'm totally cool with, like, my father-in-law and I do not necessarily agree when it comes to what party we support or whatever, and that's okay. I still love him, and I still admire him, and I still look up to him, and I still respect him. And I feel he does the same with me. But that's just one of those subjects we know, be careful, because, once you start talking about it. Yeah. I mean, and even if we do bring it up, just be respectful of the other one.
Right.
Be respectful, and know. I mean, I already know going into it that we're going to be on opposing sides.
Right.
That doesn't mean I can't have a conversation with them about that,
Well, it's interesting how we take it so personal.
Yes.
Or it's easy to take it personal.
Yes.
And because, an attack on an idea or an attack on a position, it shouldn't be
an attack on you.
Exactly. And I know some would go that way. Some would want to attack as a person and say, well, you know what?
Well, you're dumb for thinking that way.
And so it's like, but unless it's like specifically gets to that point, the benefit of the doubt. Okay, we're obviously not going to see eye to eye on this, but you know what? Like, we're still in each other's lives, and I mean, I would hope to think that we'll be better off to continue this, connection. But
one of the ways that I have managed that is, I ask, what brought you to that conclusion? Mm-hmm. Educate me. Why do you feel that way? Where are you getting your facts from? Like, how can I come to the same conclusion as you? Mm-hmm. And I think that's important, to care enough about the people that you're debating with, to ask
Right.
those questions, you know?
Right.
Instead of just shutting them down, try to see where they're coming from and understand what they see. You know, you may be surprised at what you learn about yourself, you
Right.
know?
Right. And again, it goes back to that not feeding into the us and they,
Mm-hmm.
and then we continue to do that. Then that trickles down to us. Now we're no longer brother and
Yeah.
sister,
Yeah.
relative or friend. Now it's, oh, I'm a thus or I'm a us and you're a them or vice
Yes.
versa. And it's like, well, let's not miss out on the opportunity to, I mean, in order for things to get resolved, there has to be some kind of, and I know this is easy for me to say as someone that does not have, here's a specific A to Z progress and
Right.
process on how to get there on the solution.
Well, I'm the same way though. Like
Yeah.
you think, well, I need to do something.
Yeah.
Well, what do I do?
Well, that's what it gets overwhelming.
Yeah.
So then we go back to what's the reactionary for us?
Yeah.
And because we're just like everyone, we feel fear, we feel, our, like some people say, our cheese has been moved, it's like the things are changing and it's quick. And then, who's getting caught up in what and how do we not feed into that?
Yeah.
So I'm glad you brought that up. I mean, I am, and again, you're staying true to who you are by the connectedness you still desire to have with people. Cause I'm in the same boat. Like I lean more on the side that's going to say, okay, look, you know what? We have everything on the table and man, there's really not pretty much anything here that's going to connect. I can be at peace with that.
Yeah.
I can totally be at peace of us coming to different conclusions.
Yeah.
But what's not okay for me is for me to end our friendship or end our relationship over this. Like this is okay. Like this, now we're shunning each other away. Like, that's not okay. That's not going to sit right with me. I'm going to be torn up about it.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to be like, okay, what can we do to make this right? And I know if we can do what the best we can on our end, well, it kind of goes back if there is a theme here. We talked about how it's like, if it's not us, then who is it?
Yeah.
If we see this need here and these people, be the change,
Yes.
right? If it's not us, then who? And it kind of goes back with this. I mean, if we don't see an example of someone embodying the, holding our tongue, being wise about the decisions we make when it comes to relationships we have with people, it's like, well, then we can't point fingers and say, well, they're not doing it. It's like, I think if anything this past year, I think it also embodied that you can't wait for, another person to do it. You got to be willing to go there yourself and then just make it work.
Absolutely.
Man. So you've also shared in notes, and maybe we can come to a close with this, but you said you've seen a lot of Port Lavaca, and you never know. You have a fun life story, so there may be a whole second part to all this. But your reflection on this town is that you've seen pain, but you've also seen beauty.
Yes.
In Port Lavaca, and so I just was curious to know if you can expand a little bit on that. What were some of the things that were not so pleasant? Not you have to go in detail. Not trying to open wounds.
The town, the community.
Town, the community, and then what's the beauty? I mean,
I have seen prominent people in our community turn on one another over kids, over sports, over nitpicky things. But I've also seen people in this community lift each other up and go help their neighbor. And I mean, just being here during Harvey, the aftermath of Harvey, I loved our town. I was so proud of our town.
Yeah.
I mean, there were people coming out of the woodwork to help each other.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that doesn't happen everywhere. It's not normal. As much as we want to believe the world is that great, it's not. It's not normally like that.
Right.
And to see people love one another and come together and help. And what's really cool is, I don't know if it's always been this way or if I'm just noticing it now as an adult and, someone looking in that direction, so to speak. But I love that there are so many people wanting to get involved and do different things for our families, for our kids, for our community. I mean, there are people out there just constantly thinking of ways to improve or to do things for the elderly, to do things for, the kids, just the fact that people's hearts are there and everything's I mean, look at some of the things that we've started up out of the blue.
Right.
You know, like Iguana Fest, you know, the Flip Flop Festival, you know, just different things. I love how we can come together. I mean, we can definitely be vile from time to time, but I think that it's become more of a loving community and more of a, like, the ugliness is more like to a minimum now. You know, it's like,
you feel like we're on a path that's
like,
going to lead to better things ahead.
Yeah, I really do. I think
Good.
so. I think, you know, like I said, there's always going to be that negativity somewhere.
Sure.
I mean, you can't expect your community to be 100% positive all the time.
Right. You gotta have a group that keeps us on our toes.
Somebody put some nasty lettuce on my hamburger, and so I'm gonna, you know what I mean? Like, it happens. It happens. Yeah. But I think as a whole, I think, you know,
I've seen people absolutely be super passionate about seeing things be done for the better here in our community. And like you said, for not even just people, I mean, for animals, you know, you name it. Like, they see a need, and then you got a group of people that get behind it and say, well, then we're going to be on the lookout. Almost like a neighborhood watch almost, you know. They're like, okay, well, we're going to scout this community, and if we find, you know, these specific needs, we're going to address it. And they're on it like a dispatcher.
You see how, like, you know, there are actually people who still go through the drive-thrus and pay for the person behind them's meals. Yeah. Like, that happens here.
That's awesome.
It may not be broadcast, but it happens here.
Yeah.
I've seen people buy people's groceries. I've seen people buy gas for people who couldn't afford it. I've seen a lot of really encouraging things. And to me, those are beautiful. That's what makes this community beautiful. Just seeing people love on people, period. Just being a human and recognizing that we all have bad days. You know, we all have struggles, and that's okay.
We're all human.
Absolutely.
And we experience life.
So I guess that's what I mean by love one another.
Yeah.
Just love one another, you know, accept that I may be having a bad day today, you know,
right.
and I'm probably not handling myself very well. Yeah. And maybe a little bit of grace would go a long way.
And that could pour into the beauty, like you said, is truly existent. Mm-hmm. And I'm glad you highlighted that.
Yeah.
Kind of remember it. Sometimes we just got to be reminded of that, I think. And it's good to be reminded of love, the positive things that are happening that are behind the scenes or just maybe not known.
Yeah.
Well said, Frankie.
Thank you.
So we're going to go ahead and wrap up. Truly, again, I'm grateful for your time and thanks for joining. And
thanks for having me.
It's good to have your perspective.